a lot of people that are in this space get labeled as extremists and get labeled as, these evil right wing, whatever, misogynists. And then you meet the guys and you're like, wow, these are like the nicest guys I've ever met.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah. Like, obviously there's some dudes in the space that are a little intense. And that's what I like about your stuff. It's very humorous. Like sometimes it's like on the line where I'm like, I can't tell if he's actually serious about this point right now.
Yeah, I try to keep it mysterious.
That's cool, man. What I kind of want to get into, like, what brought you to starting your page. Like, I did listen to your podcast with Will, but I'd like to go over that a little bit. Like, what led you to this space, and like what events transpired that made you want to do this, like start an Instagram page?
I had I had that Instagram for a while, and I was just lurking as an anon, as like most nonsense. Just like lurking the internet and not even really trolling, but I had no idea what I was doing on there. And I would write the stories, the kind of the stuff that you guys see in the post that I make, but I would just write that in my stories. So I would just write these long diatribes that went out to nobody. I had like 100 followers.
Yeah.
That I didn't even know, and one of my original, of that 100 followers, one of them was Tanner. And so and
Yeah.
he had followed me like when I had like 10 followers. I had made a drawing for him and like Ryan Mickler and like Ed Lattimore, and they really Tanner reached out to me because he wanted one after he saw that what I made for Ryan. And so he followed me when I had like I said, like 8 followers. And I was just lurking, writing all my absurd thoughts. And one day I just had enough because, all of it's so, the internet can either be really good or toxic. And for me, like, I was just shouting to the abyss, and I was like, you know what? Like, this is so stupid. I have 100 followers. Nobody reads any of this stuff. And I was like, and I'm like, I just sound like a crazy person. So I was like, you know what? I'm quitting my social media. I'm destroying all of this stuff because I had destroyed my social media. That was my only account, or the one that the Fizeek Father that I have now. And then Tanner, he said, don't quit. Don't, keep going. We need you to like make things. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm like, I'm not making anything. This account is private. So like literally maybe a couple of days later, I opened my account and I just, rather than putting stuff into my stories, I just put pen and paper, and like, I was like, I make all this content for nobody. I'm just going to open it up in like actual post. And then like, I don't know, I've been doing that for, what is it? I guess 4 months now, about 4 months. And that's how I just haven't stopped. I literally post something every single day.
Yeah, man. Your stuff is really entertaining, and you talked about that on Will's podcast. Your stuff stands out because of the humor element of it. Like I commented on one of your posts. I'm like, you genuinely should write a book. I'm not joking.
Yeah. I've got, oh, thank you. I've gotten so many people reach out and they're like, oh, write a book. And I have an idea of, I want to curate everything I'm making and put it into a book, and then simultaneously, because I have a bunch of other writing too to make into a book, but I want to collect everything I'm doing now, put it all together.
Mm-hmm. I'm also curious, like, what brought you, what made you climb out of the abyss of trash world? Like what you said you grew up Catholic. I also grew up Catholic, but it's kind of weird when you think of growing up in a Catholic house. How is it that you still ended up a liberal? That's an interesting thing, because I also went down that path where I kind of, my parents are more traditional and I was raised in a traditional house, but still I like rebelled. I went through my atheist phase and I became like, the typical liberal in my early 20s.
Yeah. You went that far with the atheist?
Well, I went through like the Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, I'm like watching Sam Harris own whatever religious fundamentalist. And I'd be like, yeah, religion's stupid. Like I got to this, like, but that's kind of like what is the cool thing right now,
Yeah.
And so I fell down that whole path. And then I remember I was the girl I was dating at the time.
Ah,
Well,
yes.
yeah. Who was into all the things, feminism and all that shit, and she was just totally bought into it. And I was watching a Jordan Peterson lecture. I just like stumbled on Jordan Peterson, and I was watching it, and I was like, wow, this guy's making a lot of sense right now.
Right.
And my girlfriend at the time was like, this guy's stupid. Just like start shitting on him. And then I was just like, that started to kind of like wake me up to some things. And then, I went on. I'm not going to get into my whole story maybe later on in the podcast, but I'm curious, like what was your unplugging like? Because that's what it feels like. You just unplug from the matrix, and that's where the whole red pill thing comes in. And I'm curious, like, how did you become red pilled?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I before I go into that, I want to touch on the Jordan Peterson thing because I also had a girlfriend that she was into Richard Dawkins and Sam
Oh
Harris.
shit. Yeah.
Just a smarty pants, smarter than everybody. And I I used to, before I made the post, I made artwork, and I made this Jordan Peterson like poster, and I posted on my old Instagram, like my personal one, and she's like, "What is this? Do you know who this is? This is a white supremacist." I'm like, okay, well, tell me what he's about, because I'd already read 12 Rules for Life at the time, and I'd burned through all his videos. And she couldn't tell me. She couldn't tell me a single thing. Like all her like libtard friends. I mean, clearly it didn't work, but
Yeah.
anyways, the red pill for me is I'd like to say that I'm just an average guy, so I'd like to say that like I'm amazed by some people who go into the red pill like a lot faster or just born red pilled, because it took a long time for me, and I still think like every day I become more woke.
Inverse woke.
Yeah, inverse woke. Sometimes like sometimes I struggle with it because I'm like, I don't want to be the opposite of like a feminist either. I just want to be known.
Yeah.
And just it was really nice for you to hear you say, oh, you sound like a nice guy, because I'm not trying to be a nice guy per se, but like I just want a normal world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the awakening, just the catalyst was when I got divorced, and like really re-examining everything. I didn't necessarily leave the Catholic Church per se, but I had striven, or I had not striven, I'd strained pretty far away from God, and it was just more because I didn't have a commitment to it. I didn't really, I guess I had a large ego, so I didn't really retain my faith. I didn't do that in my marriage or anything else, and it wasn't really explained to me. Even though I grew up in a Catholic home, my parents weren't like, we went to church every Sunday, and my mom had me read the Bible and everything else, but I wasn't, and I did church camp, but
Yeah.
but like you, I had rebelled, and and I'd gotten kicked out of my youth group for just being an asshat, and I think I kind of carried that rebellious attitude even through my marriage, and I didn't, a lot of things I feel like I had the liberal mind, not like a liberal where everything's everybody else's problem, but like nobody could teach me anything. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
somebody would say something like, "I've already figured it out," and I had no idea what they're talking about. And when I just became like a worse and worse person, and I ended up getting divorced, I had to take a long, hard look in the mirror, and there was a lot of like unraveling of like, okay, like I had strained from God. I didn't know why I got married, other than I just wanted to get married. I still wanted to have a lot of kids. So I guess maybe that was some biological trad in me or whatever. And I wanted it all, but I never took the time. It as lame as it sounds, like I never took the time to be like, well, what's the meaning of marriage? What does my wife mean? What does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a good man? Like, honestly, it's so embarrassing to think about now. Like, I'm a lot of shame. Like, I wish I'd. It's interesting. Your podcast called Breaking Beta, because I was in the Breaking Beta pod. Like I was in that pod and I had just no idea. I had no idea who I was. I just was like, oh, just, plow through my career and like literally clueless. So it's amazing to see people in this space that are so young, like these young kids that are like 22, 19, and they're like, they already know the things they want to do and like they,
Yeah.
commit to. And I'm like, wow, I'm such a retard.
Yeah. Well, well, I feel like the upcoming generation or the younger guys actually have a bit of a head start because a lot of us, like a lot of people, like, I'm 29, so like
Yeah.
I'm older, and we kind of had to go through all the fucking bullshit, like, and then we can
Right.
kind of like pass down some of that wisdom. But it's so easy in this world, like as a millennial, to like we just got fed all the bullshit, like all that wokeness. We had we had our smartphones at 15, like we just got bombarded with that shit. Like it's amazing to me. Like sometimes I wonder if the guys in the masculine development space kind of like they do tend to post a lot of fear porn and like they try to like be like, look at this thing, and like sometimes it feels like they're like making something more of a problem than it is. But then
Mhm.
but then if you actually like talk to other men, and you realize like how widespread like some of these like bullshit woke ideas are, and you actually realize, no, this is like actually a very big problem. There are so many guys right now bought into and the whole like matrix blue pill red pill thing, it's like kind of cringy at this point, but it's still like it's fucking real, man. Like
It's so real.
it's so real. Like when you become red pilled, like whether that be in like regards to intersexual dynamics or just the way like culture is brainwashing men to be castrated beta soy boys, it's fucking real, man. And it's so don't feel too bad about like taking a while. And like that's why I started this whole breaking beta thing. It was like, man, it's a hard process, unplugging.
It
And
really
yeah, I'm and I feel like a lot of guys, it's always like a traumatic experience, whether it be of their own hand or like someone, like some girl like screws them over, or they just have to like reevaluate everything. And that can be like some guys just break. Like some guys probably don't even make it through that.
Yeah. I think a lot. Yeah, I think y- y- I kind of feel like you have to go through you're either born into it or you have to go through something super traumatic to cross that line. And a
Mhm.
lot of guys, to your point, like even if they get to that breaking point, I think most men are so conditioned to um to just stay in the matrix that they'll do anything to they'll never cross the line that we're at. I
Mhm.
feel like I guess to toot my horn a little bit, like I feel like I'm pretty curious. So like if
Mhm.
something, like I guess quote unquote dangerous ideas, like I'll explore it because I'm like, well, why? Like even,
Mhm.
it's like a common joke now about like Hitler. Or like, well, why? Like why would a man do that kind of thing? But most people will. There's not even a question. They're just like Hitler bad, or Trump orange man bad. Like Putler, pure evil. And I think the same thing, the same thing applies with the red pill and like the dynamics of like why did the relationship fail, or why are they such a loser,
Yeah,
They just
you have
they
to
just
like fully explore the idea, even if it is fucked up and toxic, and then be like, oh, okay, well, this is the truth in it, and this is where, maybe I shouldn't touch that.
yeah. Like I was in like my men's church group, and a lot of guys when they're going through hard shit, they just and I'm not against this, but they just cry, like, literally cry. But then that was the line, like, oh, like, you know, I'm feeling Jesus. And it's like, there's more than that. Like you have to not just embrace the pain, but understand, to your point, like why? Why did this happen? Ask some more questions. But a lot of guys just everybody wants an easy answer, or a hug, or a pat on the back, or a kiss on the cheek.
Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to learning about the dynamics between men and women. That one's a really tough one for guys. They would be like, "Oh, that's not true," like hypergamy, and then you realize like nothing. The red pill is just basic. It's basic when you think about it, but we've been conditioned to like think this other. We've been conditioned to like think life is a fairy tale, And then when you discover like what's actually going on. And I've actually like, what are your thoughts on the red pill, like in regards to women? Do you think that, I personally think that some of these guys do take it a little far. And I actually had Ryan Mickler on the podcast. I haven't released the episode yet, but we were talking about it, and I was like these red pill dudes, like there's definitely like they take the there's a lot of truth in there, but then they like blow it up and they make it, everything's like, oh, a girl's always gonna monkey branch, or like hypergamy doesn't care. Well, it's like, I think that's a little extreme. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, just personally, like I think I feel exactly the same way. Like I may have been quote unquote blue pill, but I was never really, maybe like I guess the one nightest thing with my ex-wife, but
Mhm.
aside from that, I always knew like I've, as a humble man, I've always been really good with girls. So like a lot of the red pill stuff was kind of intuitive to me in that regard.
Mhm.
But I think even with that said, I'm still a romantic person, right? Like I feel like I don't know, like I don't know, it sounds soft. I don't really care, right? A lot of the
Whatever,
guys,
man.
because to your point, a lot of these guys who are like the red pill coach, or I don't
Yeah.
know, all these different gurus, or like Jack Murray, like all these guys, all these are like Rolo, like he wrote. I like his books and everything, right? And there's so much you can glean from that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a lot that's it's like you're saying, it's true, but a lot of them are just so extreme,
Mhm.
and a lot of them, like I have a hard time, not because I'm like I disagree with what they say, but sometimes it's like, you know, it's almost like you're a male feminist and you
Yeah.
take away the spice of life because,
Yeah.
like,
It like strips the meaning and like spirit out of life if you go too far down that path.
yeah, like it's like it I sound like an activist, like a soy boy, but it's like it strips the humanity out of women in some regards. Like, yeah, you can recognize that thing, like the hypergamy and all that other stuff, but I don't know, like it's not like life is supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to be like a perfect formula, and
Mhm.
can't be like alpha all the time, and it's
Yeah.
just it's pretty cringe. And a lot of the influencers, I'm like, you look like trash. So yeah, I can see why you're so angry.
Well, the thing about it too is like, if you're gonna say like hypergamy doesn't care and you're gonna be super extreme, like no, women will always do this. It's like, well, then you could flip it around and say, like, what's our sexual nature? It's to spread our seed far and wide. So then you could argue that all men are going to fucking go for the younger, tighter woman. You could say that.
100%, and I think you're onto a good point, right? There's like a lot of men don't take responsibility for like what we are as well, right? That's
Mhm.
a really great analogy or great point you made, and it's like, yeah, well, you're pointing a finger at women, but it's like, dude, what are you? And I
Mhm.
want to add another point onto like the extremism of like the hypergamy and red pill stuff. Like, I get so many messages from dudes who are like, oh, like I've done like 3 approaches, and then like, what's the signal? Like, what's the choosing signal from like,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
fucking stop overthinking that
yeah,
shit.
like you're becoming autistic. Like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
go talk to the lady, or like, like I think the biggest thing that I really agree with is just build yourself up, and then you kind of
Yeah.
understand women a lot better because it's like you're not so desperate and like thirsty. And the other guys don't understand that, they're like, so I need a woman, I need her to touch me.
Yeah, it's like, relax, dude.
Yeah, or they get so angry because these guys like lead them astray. They're like, oh, like the monkey branch thing, and I'm like, it's so, I don't know, it's awful to me, you know?
It's tough though, because like I've read Rollo's books, I've read all his books, and I think that in his books there's a ton of wisdom and
For sure.
a ton of takeaways. But and like, I don't want to, like, I don't know, I don't really talk about people publicly, but like Rollo, like I definitely respect him. I think he's got a lot of wisdom, but he's also a guy who I would say takes things a little bit too far. Like, even if you go on his Instagram page, it's like very like, it's like the line between black pill and red pill. It's like, man, like it's
Yeah.
not it's not as intense. I wish she just like discussed like the other side of it too, right? Because like men have a part to play, especially today. Like men are growing up on porn. Like monogamy is harder than ever.
Yeah.
So many aspects that are against us. Like, dude, I struggle with this shit all the time, man. Like, I have my own temptations and my own, like, I think a lot of dudes like struggle with lust, and they
Yeah.
also struggle with the fact that women and casual sex and porn is like available. Like, if you're a reasonably good looking dude, like, it's pretty easy to like have sex with a lot of women if you choose to go down that path. And that can really fuck you up too. And like a lot of these red pill guys are like, oh, just fucking date a lot of girls, like have sex with a ton of women. And it's like, well, it's gonna probably leave you spiritually broken.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah. No, go ahead.
yeah, that's pretty much it. Like there's a lot to it that's a little bit like the red pill without a moral framework is dangerous.
Right. I completely agree. Like, I feel like, I've never pretended to be a saint. I'm not a saint at all. Like, I feel like I'm trying to salvage my soul, whatever's left of it. And a lot of what I write is like, trying to, it's almost like I wish I could send these things back in time to myself. But to your point about, like, the red pill and like sleeping with a bunch of girls, like I get messages from guys who are like, how many girls should I sleep with and this and that, and like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, honestly, like, I would, if I could, I would go back in time and just trade everything away, because people don't know how much it really strips your soul. And maybe it's anecdotal to me, but it's a real thing. At least for me, it is. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, after a certain amount of time, or women, you become a little bit like spiritually deadened.
Mm-hmm. No, man,
Takes
I
away
can
from takes away from the romance.
100%. And like you think you want it, and then you actually go and partake, and then after you're like, oh, like you kind of feel like every time you do it, it like takes something from you.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, like, because like women, they're not like an object. They're not an object.
Fucking
Someone's daughter. In some ways, it's kind of like porn. Like afterwards, or if like you're doing something afterwards, you're like sad. You're like, why did I do this?
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Well,
Yeah.
it's also a trap that got like I'll just speak from my own experience. Like, we're in this world that seems to be like becoming more and more degenerate, and it's kind of like, why should I be a good guy if all women are fucking sluts? You could get into that headspace where you're like, you just see so many of these girls, like almost like sociopathic. Like, they're just fucking sleeping around and doing a bunch of crazy shit. And then you gotta get into that black pill headspace where you're like, oh, well, none of these girls are going to be loyal. Like, none of these girls are good mother or wife material. Like, you can kind of get into that headspace too. So you're like, and you'll actually hear a lot of these red pill guys like, enjoy the decline, enjoy the decline. Like, fuck, man, that's dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a hard thing to your point. It's like, I never want to be a pessimist. Sometimes I have to remind myself not to black pill. But yeah, it's like, enjoy the decline. Like, what? The West is fallen. But it's true, it's true to a degree. Like, you see a lot of these women, and it's hard. I don't know. That's the tragedy. I have no good advice there, but it's like, oh man, you kind of almost wish Disney was real, and like a little bit,
Yeah. Well, it's tough too, because then you like have expectations for a woman where you like I'll take my parents for example. Like, my parents are high school sweethearts, and they've stayed married.
Yeah.
So I have this, like this relationship, this example of what a relationship could look like. But they never slept with other people before they got married. But now, like, you meet a girl who's like 24 years old, and like the chances of her not having a very high notch count is fucking, and then there's the whole argument like, oh, well, should you really care about notch count? Well, it's like fucking a little bit. Yeah, you should care a little bit, because
Right.
it does matter. But then you think, but this is the thing about the notch count thing, and you're like, oh, well, this woman slept with 20 dudes. And then you think about yourself and you're like, well, I've slept with 20 women, like, so you like expect this this woman who's like a virgin and, monogamy forever kind of thing. But then you've already kind of fucking broke the seal yourself. So you can't really have that expectation. But then these red pill guys will say shit like, well, it's different when a guy sleeps with a lot of girls. And it might be different. It does feel like that could be a little different, but there's that.
Yeah. It's something to think. I guess it's something to think on, right? Like, how do you? Sometimes there's so many rules with like the red pill, like all the guys and like, oh, this and that. But you're right. Like, it's like, yeah, wait a second. Like, how many women have I been with?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You gotta kind of laugh. You gotta kind of laugh at it a little bit.
Yeah, you got to be able to laugh at how sad or absurd life is sometimes.
What about like your your political unplugging, or just your, kind of like you live in California, so I can only imagine like what kind of the culture you're immersed in, and like what people think. They probably like, are you pretty alone in the way you think culturally and politically?
Yeah, yeah, I am. I'm an
So
experience.
alone.
Before I had this social account, I had like a personal one. Actually, I reactivated it, but I'm gonna deactivate it again. But Instagram doesn't let you deactivate it for like a week. But anyways, I would post stuff like I don't know, barely quote unquote red pill, and it wouldn't even be about Trump. Maybe it was like maybe something slightly conservative, and really not even like you couldn't really tell even if you were a normie. And people, they'd be like, Matt, they're like, I didn't vote for Trump, blah, blah. I didn't even mention Trump's name. And that's how extreme people are. And I feel like the Overton window has just shifted. Like, I was never really political at all. I couldn't even tell you what a Republican or a Democrat was. I didn't care. Like, and I feel like in some degree, like, I feel like that's how men should be living their lives. Like, all like, I mean, in addition to all the other stuff I said, you should also be doing like, like learn, staying true to your faith,
Yeah.
being a good man. But I was more like always trying to be like, okay, how do I make the most of my life? And, hanging out with your buddies, going to school, whatever, pursuing a good career. And so I didn't care. Like, I just was like, hey, just work hard in life and things will work itself out. And so like for the longest time, I had no political affiliation. And I think like part of the awakening probably was everything just like poured in during my divorce, because that's when I faced the court system. And I'm like, and I feel like I'm pretty, I don't know, lenient or easygoing. So initially, after the divorce, like I had to pay a certain amount based on my salary and all this other stuff. But when I started to look at it like more objectively, like, because I started questioning things once the red pill happened, because I'm like, okay, question everything. But then I started to calculate like how much per minute I had to pay to see my own son, And when I objectively thought about it and like the difference between like the sexes, right? Because they're always talking about equality, this and that. But when you find out like what the court system is, how arbitrary it is, like I'm literally paying a ransom to see my own kid. And then if you think about it, it's like, well, why? Like, like I try to talk to my ex, and I'm not disparaging her. Like, we have a really good relationship, but like, women are so conditioned to not even think about it. They're like, well, like I have to, help him with his homework on these days or have him more. And like, you don't understand that. I'm like, I would rather do that. Like, it's like, you can't put a price tag on that. Right. But the court system puts an arbitrary price, and like the men you have to default and pay for that. Right. And it's like, that's opened up a whole can of like the equality thing, like literally everything I'm sure you already know, like Warren Farrell, Rollo.
Yeah.
I've probably went down every single red pill avenue you could. Like I've read all the red pill divorce books, like the psychology, like how it's all it's all money, it's like money laundering. It's all a big scheme. And for me, it was really tough because I was struggling immensely with it, like not just because there's so many issues with it. Like, for me, like I have my son on the weekends, and I have a few days during the week. Sometimes like my schedule changes, or like with my son, the custody time, but it's like, it's made it really hard. Not that I'm trading off the time with my son, but to date, but then also like I have to like work more to pay for my son to see him. And then when you're stressed because of that, it's like, well, what kind of father am I? And you're trying your best. And then when you get into the red pill, you see and all the different conditioning with like men and young boys and all this other stuff. I'm like, how do I make the most impact in my son's life when I have him? And when you go down all those avenues, you start to see like literally everything. You start to see it in the politics. You see it like with like, you know, I think it was Warren in 2000, Elizabeth Warren, or 2020, when she had like the transgender kid on the debate stage, and she's like, oh, like little Timmy is little Susie. And then you have like Gavin Newsom, who's like, you know, women are better than men at everything. And most of my family members and friends, like, you know, people on Instagram, they're like, believe all women. They're like the Me Too kind of crowd. You know, men are bad, this and that. And I remember, you know, my brother had found a Ayn Rand book in my room, and he said, I don't even know who you are anymore. Like he's that conditioned to
What's that book about? I'm actually not familiar with that book.
Ayn Rand, the Fountainhead.
What's it called? Sorry,
the Fountainhead.
I haven't heard of that.
Oh, really? Yeah, and then I also had like Atlas Shrugged. I won't spoil it for you, but you know, Ayn Rand's like an objectivist, like it's like economics and about, I don't know, I won't ruin it, but you know, it's right wing. And
so
my brother,
this is a book about being a Nazi, pretty much.
yeah, how-to guide. And my brother was like, he's like, I don't even know who you are. You're suffering from toxic masculinity. And that was
God.
That was the first time I ever heard that like phrase, and I was like, what is toxic masculinity?
What does that mean?
Yeah. And my brother, you know, during the same time frame, like, my brother was talking to me about, I was like, hey dude, how's college? Because he went to UCSD, and he was talking about how he was doing like a dissertation on Wonder Woman. I was like, Wonder Woman? I'm like, what about? He's like, oh, like how there's a gender spectrum and there's not really men and women, and like, you know, Wonder Woman is the ideal for all humans. And I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't.
That's the scary part, man. Like a lot of this seems like a big troll. Like, are they joking? Like when's the punchline? You know?
Yeah, that's what I feel like it's gotten to that point where it got so absurd. And like I said, I haven't really changed. I have the same demeanor always, but like my brother, a lot of my family and friends, a lot of people just completely disowned me. You know, they just were like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm still the same person, but they can't even hear like the internal plight. I'm not like, hey, like feel sorry for me, but I'm like, I'm just asking questions. And a lot of it was just around like the custody of my son and, you know, divorce and all that other stuff. But now you're seeing it play out with different things in the world, like where there's mask, Ukraine, all this stuff. And you ask questions now, it's like a cartoon, to your point. Everything's like it's almost like so ridiculous. You just wonder how come, like, how can you keep going with all this? You know, like nobody asks questions, and you realize how powerful the propaganda is, or how coon-brained everybody is. You know what I mean? They're not stupid, but it's like, this is one thing I'm trying to like resolve. I'm like, how is it such a powerful grip on people, you know?
Do you ever check yourself a little bit? Like every once in a while, you're just like, am I the crazy one? You have to like reassess because you feel like you're going mad because you're like, how are these people buying into it? Like I'll tell you a little bit about my my unplugging. I was a musician. Like I still am a musician. You can see the keyboard in the back here, but like I was a music producer, and I was like trying to make that my career for a long time.
Right.
So I had a lot of artistic friends, and you know that scene is ultra woke.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And you know, I wasn't very like you, like I wasn't a political guy. Like it didn't interest me. You know, I was just always like, if I, you know, I like making music, so I made music, or I started to get into working out and training, and like those were my interests. I didn't give a shit about politics. But you know, as time went on, and you know, I got out of that relationship, and I started listening to Jordan Peterson. You know, as you kind of feel like this, like, you know, as a man in this culture, you kind of feel a hole within yourself. You know, you feel like something's going on, like something's not right. So then I went down the Jordan Peterson rabbit hole and was like, wow, this guy's like speaking my language. This makes sense.
Right.
And I remember like I couldn't even talk about Jordan Peterson, and he's so tame. Like
He's so tame.
he's so tame.
Yeah. It's like when you first get into Jordan, it's like, at the time, I don't know how it was for you. You're like, wow, this is like crazy. But then, like, as you get more red pill, like now you look back, you're like, that's nothing.
That's entry level. That's entry level shit.
Yeah.
But well, that's the thing. Like, I was still pretty like woke / liberal minded at the time. Like, even reading Jordan, and I remember, I was working with a producer at the time, and I started bringing up Jordan Peterson, and I was kind of I was a little bit ignorant at first to how people would react to him, because like I thought his stuff was super tame, and he was just, most of his stuff wasn't even political. Like, and then this person says to me, it's like, oh, you got to be careful about that guy. My wife is a Marxist. He just says that. And at the time, like I was so politically ignorant that I couldn't even tell you like what a Marxist thought.
Hey,
Like,
yeah.
because I was so just not even in that. And
Yeah.
I remember kind of like being like, what? And I was kind of confused. Like he pretty much like said, like he like hinted at this guy being like dangerous for me to be listening to.
Right.
And I was just like, dude, what's going on? So then I look up like Marxism, and I'm like, oh, that's fucked up. and then I and then I and then like the coup hit. And then at first when the coup hit, I was like, I was a little bit worried for the first 2 weeks. I was like, fuck, man. They're like, I lost my job. I was working at a gym, lost my job. And about 2 weeks in, I was like, hey, something's fucked up with this. And then the ultimate unplugging, when it was like full blown. Oh, I was already kind of like, yeah, I was already kind of reading Rollo at this time, and like going down these dark extremist rabbit holes on my own. And just like the world was opening up to me, man. I was just like, wow, this is all making so much sense. And then BLM hit, and the George Floyd shit came out, and I was like, dude, the world has gone fucking in. It was like this, like, it was like this rising thing, and then all of a sudden it just exploded. And then I just went on my I had a music Instagram page.
Yeah.
And I had, like all my connections on there, my entire network, like this like career I'd been striving for. And at that time, I had already kind of fell out of love with the music industry. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go down this path anymore. There's nothing down this road for me anymore. So I just posted some shit. I was just like, yo, this BLM shit is like, this BLM stuff is fucking it's like manipulating people emotionally. And if you actually look at the stats, all of this is wrong. And how do you know that cop was actually racially motivated? Like, I just had so many like challenges to the BLM stuff. And then all of a sudden, dude, it was like just bombarded with messages. I lost like 100 followers immediately, like people losing their mind. I had a friend of mine, he's black, and he just said like, you can't put down your white privilege for 2 fucking minutes, and like all this shit, dude. Like the world, like every people that I had known for years blocked me without saying a word, and never talked. Like I haven't talked to them in like 5 years. They just blocked me without saying a word, because I just went out like, because I just like questioned the narrative. I just questioned the narrative, and then I realized, and that's like the moment where I was like, dude, I get it. I know what's going on. I fucking have like I've risen above. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome to the Nazi party.
Yeah, what's up, dude? And also like something that's also kind of fucked up is before, when I was making music and shit, I have you ever done psychedelics?
No, I'm trying to think. I was like, have I? No.
Yeah, so I experimented with like psilocybin and LSD for quite a few years. And I remember I thought that was the red pill. Yeah, so I was like, wow, man, like I know I'm like the center of like I am the universe, dude, and like I transcend my ego. But it was kind of funny. Like I was actually talking about this with Tanner. It was like, I don't know like what he said exactly. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, psychedelics, like that whole thing is like, it's like spiritual porn. It's like it doesn't actually mean anything. Like you feel like you're all, you're connected to the universe and shit, and you're like you're awake, but it's actually like more delusion.
It's
And
more
so
like
it's
the biological side, right? It's like the chemicals.
yeah, and it's kind of weird because you do feel like you're like talking to God and shit when you're on these drugs. And like I don't know, like I have mixed feelings about psychedelics. But it was kind of funny because I thought I had kind of been red pilled, but I was actually like becoming more woke. And then, and then so I have a very confusing fuck. It was a confusing long journey to this point.
Yeah. Well, I gotta commend you because most people at that point, when somebody says like apologize, you're like, ah, fuck you. Like,
Well, yeah, I told my friend like that was the one like I don't give a fuck about a bunch of random people, but like when my friend said that and like, being the fact that he's like this like well, I kind of felt, and as a white man, I'm not allowed to speak on it, but I'm like, "Man, you live in Canada.
yeah,
You're like a super chill dude. I've never seen anyone be rude or racist towards you." And then he just brings up some random story about how some coach said the N-word around him or something. I'm like, dude, that fucking sucks. But it's like, who gives a fuck about your coach? Like, he just, and I'm a straight white man, can't talk about it. But I'm like, bro, like, we're fucking homies. And I'm just telling you what I think about this. This isn't an attack on you, but just the fact that I was attacking the narrative at all, he saw me as a threat to the point where he would just completely disconnect our relationship because of that. And I just said, "Man, I wish you the best, dude." Like he's like, I can't talk to you, man." I'm like, I wish you the best, bro." Like,
yeah. Well, I find it such a tragedy, like the whole BLM, the race stuff. Like it to me, it's so sad. Or I mean, just even the political stuff. Like to your point, you lose. I think that's really painful. Like you lose friends or family you've known your whole life. You haven't really changed. I mean, like I said, we changed to a degree, but you have no animosity towards them, even though
yeah.
we make fun of them. But
Yeah.
it's like to them, it's like a light switch goes off, and you're basically Hitler, and it's such a tragedy because you can't question the narrative, and you can't even ask basic questions like just a little bit. And I'm sure you probably have like love for that friend or
Oh
people that
yeah,
you
for
lost.
sure. Well, that's
Some
the
of
thing.
some of you're like, oh fuck you, whatever.
Some of them I'm like, fuck you because you wouldn't even talk to me. Like at least he talked to me and told me why he wouldn't ever talk to me. Some people like just like blocked me immediately and ended the relationship 100%. It's just like, dude, like at least fucking say something, man. It's like, here's the thing too. And like I am not an extreme person. I feel like if I'm extremely anything, it's extremely rational, right?
Yeah,
It's like, dude, like even if you disagree with me, that's cool.
right.
Like the difference between people in our camp, I'm going to say our camp because I don't want to fucking be too tribal here. But it's
Sure.
like if someone like, we'll tease like the soy boys and the leftists, but at the same time, like we want we want those guys to transcend and figure out what's going on. And if they reached out a hand, we'd fucking pull them out and be like, "You fucking made it, bro." You know what I'm saying? But
True.
they won't do the same for you, man. Right?
They
If
don't.
they see you as lost, they won't reach their hand out.
No, they want you. They actually want you to. This is like another black pill. They actually want you to die,
Yeah, dude.
and they probably kill you.
Yeah, well, dude, the couve, man. They want
Yeah,
you to
the
like
I, yeah,
if you
the I,
didn't get the fucking poke, you gotta fucking die.
yeah, you're gonna die. They're literally the NPC meme. And, and that's really hard because you're like to your point, like you just want them to cross that chasm, right? Because the opposite, like I always think of it like with like I don't know what our camp and then like the woke I guess the red pill and the woke. The red pill, like all you do is feel pain because everybody hates you, right? But you know the truth, so you can't be like, oh, like because you'd be lying to yourself, and you can't even if you want to lie to yourself, you can't. You're like, I just can't do it. I can't lie anymore. But with the woke, it's just all delusion, and it's always somebody else's problem. It's always the white man. It's always this person. They're fat phobic, and I'm like, or everything's like super like just be yourself, blah blah blah. But it's not even be yourself. It's be the worst version of yourself. And if
Mhm.
anybody asks why or questions a little bit, then they should die immediately.
Yeah, the whole like the couve thing was fucked up because you know, it was kind of funny too. It was like BLM and then COVID hit. or COVID. What? Sorry, COVID was already fucking out, but it just took a little break for a few months.
Okay. Like, it's amazing how powerful the psyop is, right? Everybody's like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're like Black Lives Matter, and then they put the black square and all the other shit, and like St. George Floyd with like a gold casket, and like people just like debasing themselves, like taking a knee. And to me, I mean, I hate to say this, like, oh, you're the real racist, but I hate that shit. And to me, it's just so when people are like, oh, like white privilege, I'm like, shut up, just shut up, like you loser, you know, like yourself, or you have no idea, like what anybody goes through, no matter what their race, right? And for people, like I'll say this on this podcast, it's like like I'm not denying like that, some people like maybe black people go through, not maybe, they go through different things, but it's not like other people don't either, to discount that their life experience. I'm like, you have to have some pretty big arrogance on you, or if you blame all your problems on everybody else, I'm like, you're a pussy. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And people are like, liberals are like, oh my God, a black person, like I'm just gonna punch myself in the nuts, or like,
Yeah.
I always make this joke. They claim that they'll punch a Nazi, but they'll see a black person and then they're scared as shit to say something. I'm like, you're a loser, absolute pussy.
Yeah. It's bad, man. And the whole like victimhood around everything. It's like literally the only category that's not allowed to be a victim is a straight white male. Right? If you're a woman, you can be a victim. If you're a gay white man, you can be a victim.
Yeah.
But if you're a straight white male, you're not allowed to be a victim at all. The interesting thing is you're not like, I'm not saying you should be a victim. I'm not saying we should like pretend like we're victims. I'm saying like, if you were to say, well, actually like straight white men kind of have a hard time because you fuckers have become crazy and think we're the enemy.
Right.
So you could actually argue that like straight white men are victimized. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying you could do that.
Yeah. I think some of the details are like lost on like normies or libtards. In that, like, in order for them to be a victim or blaming the straight white male, I'm like, you're admitting that they're better than you. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like
yeah, it's like, sorry, what?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I can't see past my privilege of being fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's it. So I'll like touch on the race thing again, like, or the straight white male. So like, I think it's I don't know. I think it might be kind of obvious to some people that like I'm mixed race, and like I'm half white and then I'm half jungle Asian. And my dad's like a 6'3", blue-eyed, like Aryan man. And my son, like if I, he's also blonde, right? Straight white male, total dude. And I'm not like, I'm not like in a liberal sense. I'm not like, oh, play with trucks or like, super ultra right wing. He just is that way. He gravitates towards like boy things. He's just ultra boy. And I think about like these women who like, they either castrate their child or they go into this virtue signaling thing, or specifically with race, when they're like, oh, black people this and white privilege this. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you really care about your child? Because what you're doing is I sound like an activist. You're enabling a worse world for your kid. Like, I'm not going to take a knee for a black person and be like, Black Lives Matter. And then like, sell it my son. I'm like, hey son, you have privilege. Hey son, like, what's the other one?
You're a toxic male,
You're a toxic male. Like, I'm his father. My job is to protect him, right? Like, I can acknowledge that there's like, indifferences, but if I'm going to do that too, I'm going to do it for everybody, right? But I'm not going to sell it my kid or like post a fucking black square. And personally, I feel like I've been attacked by the BLM George Floyd shit, because they created that June 19th thing on that's my son's birthday. Pisses me off because I'm like, of all the fucking days, like, now I have to celebrate this stuff, and he's like the blonde straight white male kid. Oh my! I been attacked by trash world. My son has.
That's so funny too. Like
Yeah.
people are gonna be pissed just hearing about this conversation or just hearing our conversation right now. You know that there's people fucking angry. And the silly thing about it is, man, like I genuinely want race relations to be better. Like I genuinely want the world to be a better place.
Absolutely.
You know, and like the thing about it is like they can disagree with me and think I'm whatever they want to think, but like the truth is like I'm not racist, I'm not a white supremacist, and I want people to be based on their uh I want people to be judged by their character. You know, I want all those things that they supposedly fucking want, but I think that they're doing it in a really fucking stupid way. And then there's a part of me that thinks that you know, what's that Jordan Peterson thing where he says oh, Marxism isn't based on like a love for the poor, it's based on a hatred of the rich,
I
you
would
know?
agree with that.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's
go ahead.
it's something like that. And that's what I think, like, is BLM really, is this whole like identity politics thing, is it about like, you know, a love for the minorities or the people of color, the marginalized groups, or is it a hatred of white people?
I
You
think
know?
it's
Yeah,
I
what do you think it is, man?
yeah. Come for me now, but I feel like it's a little bit. It's really the. I mean, clearly the latter. Like you think about like Marxism in terms of like if you want to do the Jordan Peterson thing, like there's like let's say like there's a curve like of like race. What is it, the bell curve of race, hierarchy, capital, whatever that is, and you think about BLM or Marxism, really all it is a flat, it's like a hatred of, because their target is like clearly like, well, they hate white people and black power, black supremacy and all this other stuff. But um you think about American, I guess I think it is an American idea or whatever it is, like the global core, global homo, where they want to flatline everything. It's a really myopic view of what people should be, right? They have all these quotas, like to your point about Marxism, and it's arbitrary. It doesn't even match the population count. And it actually is a destruction of diversity because they want to spread it throughout the world with like democracy and like Ukraine or Russia or all these other countries. But if you think about it, it's like, why would you want like a country like Japan, right? Which is like pretty homogenous. They're like, Japan needs to have more immigrants. I'm like, you mean Japan can't have sovereignty over whether it's race or culture? They can't retain that and keep their national sovereignty. Don't you preserve diversity when you do that? Whether it's like China or even a European country, right? Like, or Germany obviously doesn't look the same anymore, but it's like, why can't people have that? And if you look at like the world population, white people are like 11% of like the world population. They're a minority, and they want to dilute all of that. And it's like, to me, I'm like, if you are trying to force this really niche American idea of like where we all get along, we all have all these different backgrounds and LGBTQ plus this and that. It's not really diversity. It's just like a convoluting of this middle gray NPC person. You like just strip everything about like what they believe, whether it's like people are like, different religions are strictly against like homosexuality or different cultures, whatnot. But like you're trying to erase any of that and have this like rainbow coalition that is almost impossible to achieve. And BLM, in their specific regard, it's like, to me, it's like more black supremacy of like,
Oh,
and
100%, man.
it's not even just black supremacy, it's trans, it's like really specific. It's like trans black women or whatever constituency
Yeah,
it
like
is.
the most like fucking niche like thing you can find.
Yeah, and then you because I work in advertising, and they always, for the last decade, it's like, oh, make sure you have like a black male like a white woman, or if it's like a Muslim, it's like make sure they're like queer. And I'm like, that's not even a thing. Or they'll
So
rewrite.
you actually have to like kind of like fucking go along with that shit.
Yeah, and all of it is absurd, and you can't question any of it. It's like you're a bigot, but it's like, well, what does race mean? What is, you're not a racist, but
No.
like there's a thing
Well,
about biology. I'm like, what is the, like if you're genotype or phenotype, and I'm not like a race realist or anything like that, but it's like, how do you stay rooted in things, right? It's like when you talk about, it's not just like the nuclear family that's falling apart, but I would even say like racial kind of things. Like for me, I'm mixed race, and I'm separated by oceans, like from like where my mom comes from and from my dad comes from. That gets diluted over time. Like, how do I retain any of like the European side of me, or the South Pacific where like my mom came from? Like, how do I stay grounded in that? And like, what does that mean if like that gets diluted over time? How does like my lineage know what we are, except for American global whatever they're trying to sell you, this bullshit of like you're everything, you know what I mean? And it's like it's not rooted in anything except like consumerism.
Mhm.
It was like a long diatribe, but like
No, man.
people never ask those questions. Like, well, where are we going? What does this lead to?
Yeah, it leads to like a genderless, like it just strips you of all individual. Like you're not an individual anymore. You're just part of like a homogenous like NPC blob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're just like Coomer, and they
Yeah, it's
want you
not.
to like cut off your balls.
Yeah, it's not good, man. And the funny thing about that is, like you said, you're in advertising, and they're making you, you got to put a black woman here, or a disabled Muslim trans woman, whatever. And it's like, okay, do you want me to like be racist? Do you want me to like, or not be racist, but like see everything through a racial lens or not? Right?
That's really
Because
funny you
like,
said that. True. You
because
have to
like
be
when
racist.
yeah, I don't know if it's racist necessarily, but you have to like be like very like racially focused, like
Right.
and I think there was kind of like a break in like the racial like cultural thing. Like when I was younger, like when I was like, like 8 to 15 or whatever, you wouldn't really think about it. Like if you were friends with like a black guy at school, you didn't think
Yeah.
about any of this shit. Or like you're friends with an Asian kid. It's like everyone's everyone was just homies.
It's
And
so
now it's like it's like, no, you need to pay attention because now you're friends with a black kid. And like it's like what? Like
yeah.
what the fuck? What's
Did
the
you kiss his hand today?
Yeah, it's messed up, man.
No, what's so funny about what you're saying is like, yeah, like my best friend growing up was black, and like it's like even my parents, like because I grew up in the Philippines for like the first like 8 years of my life, and like one of my dad's best friends was black, and it was like there were so many different races like on the air base that I grew up on, and it's a hodgepodge of like military personnel and everything else like that. And like you were friends with them, even in high school, middle school, like you were friends with like, different kids of all different races. And now like we all got along, we were all chill, but now they've indoctrinated it so far. And you have these kids who have never lived that, who are all they watch is because they consume things through screens, and they think like the world's always an evil. And even a lot of those people, like, even people like almost like sleeper agents, they're like activated that they're like, oh, wait, everybody's been racist to me all along. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not friends with you, Damien, anymore because you said one thing that,
Yeah.
you're a racist all along. And you're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. No, no, no. I've witnessed that for sure. Yeah, it's a crazy world, man. I do you think that there is a bit of a mass unplugging, or do you think it's getting worse? Like, do you think that this, like, I think of people like Ryan Mickler, and he's like one of the most like popular kind of like, he's like one of the guys at the forefront of like the masculine development space.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering, like, do you think this masculine development brand or whatever it is, do you think it's actually helping right now? Do you think like more people are unplugging, or
Um,
are you optimistic or nihilistic? That's what I'm asking. Should we
I,
just should we just enjoy the decline, or should we fucking be heroes? Like, what do you want? What should we do?
well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm black pilled. Sometimes I think about, I guess I can't really unplug. But I'm not a quitter by any means. I always feel like there's always something you can do. You always have to try. And I think it goes down to like the meta level of yourself, like you're saying, breaking beta is like a great analogy of like what everyone should strive to be. But I think collectively as a nation or a tribe or a town or people, like whatever is happening now, I even against all odds, I think we should still try.
Mhm.
But as far as like what the odds are now, or if people are awakening, I don't know. Like I we have people on here that I know that are like, we're the tip of the spear. The awakening is just happening. And I try whatever I'm doing, like the tiny part. Like, I'm like, I don't know if that's helping, or, I get messages all the time. Like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like you're like opening my eyes and I love it. I'm more so when it's people like improving themselves on that kind of level, but like the other red pill stuff, I'm like, cool, that's great too. Because what I try to encourage people to do is I'm trying to clone myself because I know I'm going to get canceled maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but I want people to do the same thing that I'm doing and just, like Tanner encouraged me to do, like, just say something, because most people are afraid to, and there's good reason for it. But I feel like if we did it in larger numbers, then that's how we actually win. But I think a lot of people are just too scared. And I think it goes back to the individual, because a lot of men are like just chicken shit. They have like no balls.
Mm-hmm.
They let women bully side them. They let them like boss them around. And so I guess I would say like just we shouldn't quit, but I don't know, because there's so many things to your point about like you had the coup, and then you had BLM, and then now you have Ukraine, and it still doesn't register with people. You talk to like normies and they're like, go to war, and I'm like, what the why? For what? Who's going to war? Are you going to war? Like, or like, most women are really like poor with like just financials or economics or basic understanding of geopolitics. Not that you want women to be right. You just want women to be like good natured and whatnot. But they're like, oh, like I was on a date with a girl the other day. She's like, oh, Pooler has really small dick energy. I'm like,
Not really.
Yeah,
not really. Like
not
you
really.
you don't have to like the guy, but he's got fucking balls.
Yeah, and it's like, well, do you and then you ask them like just basic like stuff like, do you know what the Federal Reserve is? Do you know like what, like if Ukraine is like money laundering for the elites? Like, why do we have inflation right now? Do you know how much money is like in circulation? Like, what are your savings? Why do you think it's so hard to live in California? And chicks don't, it doesn't register. And because a lot of dudes are really feminine, they're becoming more like women. They're in the same kind of mindset. It doesn't, you know what I mean? I'm like, and
Yeah.
I might be biased because I'm in California, and that's probably why I'm a little bit more black pilled. But I'm like, I would love there to be. Maybe I'm not seeing more of it. Maybe I need to get even more involved. But I'm not sure how. I don't want to enjoy the decline. I hate that mentality. I don't.
I fucking hate that shit.
I'd rather die trying than
Yeah.
live in trash world. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I want to
I don't
go.
know. I'm curious about you. What do you think? Do you think like there's hope or
I think
an awakening?
Well, first off, I'm just gonna control myself. I'm gonna like constantly strive to be better, and I'm gonna fight the good fight, because if like if you believe in an afterlife, if you're a religious person, you don't want to be the guy. Like if you got to go talk to God after this lifetime, and be like, yeah, I just enjoyed the decline, bro. Yeah, fuck it, man. It's like, wow. Also, that's like, I have a big problem with some of these red pill gurus that kind of like shit on the like they call it like Bud Light masculinity. Like, oh, you guys think you're heroes? Wow. It's like you're blue pill to think that the world could be a better place. It's like you guys are fucking degenerate. Like, I'm not gonna enjoy the decline.
Yeah, well, a lot of them aren't even fathers. That's for me. I'm like, I'm not going to be alive in the future. My kid is, and a lot of these guys you're talking about, they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, you don't even have a kid, bro. Like, you're a loser.
Yeah.
Your DNA is not living. It's not going on.
Yeah. So why you don't really have like a state? You don't have like a. Yeah, you're not really invested in the future at that point.
Right.
No, so I don't know. Personally, like I'm optimistic about my own life. Like the last 2 years have been like personally, like when it comes to like physical fitness and financially, like I've been doing really well. Like I'm happy with what I'm doing. And at first, like it used to bug me a lot. Like even like like I'm in Alberta, Canada, and like it's a very conservative province. It's like one of the most conservative. I guess it would be like the Texas of America.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know. I've never been to Texas, but that's what people tell me, and I'm kind of thinking that that's what it's like. And a lot of farmers, a lot of cowboys here and shit.
Oh, right on.
But even the conservative minded people are fucking NPCs, dude. Like we have liberals and then we have liberal light. That's what it is, man. Like I'm like there's one party here that I voted for, but they got like 0.001, like they got like hardly any votes.
That's
But
sad.
they're like the Libertarian Freedom Party, like against all the mandates and shit.
Yeah.
And the conservatives here were like full blown vax mandates and all that shit. And now all of a sudden they're changing their tune after the truck convoys and stuff, which is just a whole other like that's also something to think about. But
Right.
I don't know, man. I kind of go through waves. I'm not the kind of guy who thinks like I'm not black pilled. Like I don't think like all women are like I'm not gonna be that guy who thinks like all women are fucking sluts, all women are trash, because then I just sound like a fucking purple haired feminazi. You know what I'm saying? Like, no,
Yeah.
man, there's lots of good women out there. There's lots of good dudes out there. I think like being connected to this community, people like you, Tanner, Ryan Mickler, Jack Donovan, like all these guys that are, discussing these ideas, it makes you feel a little bit less crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
You're like, oh, there's other people who think like me. That's cool. They're not fucking, part of clown world. Like if you felt alone in it, I could see you becoming quite black pilled pretty quick.
Right.
Because I I was talking to some of my friends that I have like friends that are like online friends at this point, because like as a dude, like you go out into the real world, it's like very hard to find like-minded people, because like you say, most men they're like bullied by their wives or their girlfriends.
Yeah, most
And
men, I completely agree. They're not like you where I see your all your lifting videos. That's like rare. That's rare these days, which is sad.
like lifting videos.
Or like, like just working out, like basic,
Oh, dude, that's
like
actually
just
something I want to
working
get
out.
into.
Oh
Like
yeah.
like the physique and Fizeek Father. Like how important like being physically fit is,
I
you
think
know.
it's I think it's very important. It's kind of like in some way I'm going to relate it back to your psychedelics. Like the mind and body are pretty close, right? Like I'm not saying like, like things will change as you age, obviously, right? But I feel like it's like it's kind of like a synergistic, like, and it sounds like such a cliche, but when you have your physique dialed in, it really shows you like, hey, if you can lift a little bit of weight, if you can, move a few pounds, like you can see like, oh, I can push myself in other areas of life, whether it's like, being confident with a woman or like your job. But also it's so easy. Like I know like lifting weights can be hard, like in the moment, or like just getting in the gym sometimes, but it's easy in the fact that it's like the easy, like
It's simple.
it's simple and it's really hard to fail. Like, you just follow the program or whatever you're doing and eat, have a little bit of discipline and whatnot. And you can see your, the physical translation like on your body in the mirror, and the mirror doesn't lie. And it's everything. And I think, it's not just like the body, but it's like the discipline of the mind, like being able to push yourself, challenge yourself, like, cause nobody's going to force you to, lift a barbell or like put on that extra 20 pounds that you're not sure about, and I think it allows you to be braver, and it's just it's the basics. And when you can do
Yeah.
that, like, you can do everything else in your life. And most men don't see the value in that. They're like, oh, I'm fine. Like my wife likes my body, but I'm addicted to porn, you know, or they can't understand like maybe why their wife isn't attracted because they've let themselves go. You know what I mean? And it's like to your point about males not seeing
Yeah.
what's in front of them. They're like, you look at their wife and like their wife looks way better than they do. You know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, just
That would fucking drive me crazy. I gotta be hot. I gotta be hotter than my wife.
yeah, me too.
um,
You can't leave me. I'm hotter than you.
yeah. There's going back to psychedelics. I remember like I was a very skinny kid. Like
Yeah.
I'm like like I weighed like I'm like 200 pounds right now, and
Oh, nice.
I
Me
was like
too.
150, 160 when I was in high school. Like I'm like very like skinny, like I was like vegetarian at one point in my life, which is fucking another
Oh, no
stupid.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I've been through it all, man. like
Yeah.
like I said, long journey. But
Yeah.
I remember I was on mushrooms once and I'm touching my body and I like literally almost like could like wrap my hand around my arm, and I was like, I'm fucking small, dude. Like I just started feeling myself. I'm like, I'm barely even anything. And I was like,
Yeah,
I made a promise to myself. I'm like, you're gonna put on some fucking mass.
it's good. Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like even just training and like getting stronger. Like I used to have like, dude, the things that physical training can do for you, like even when it comes to like I had a lot of like back pain and like issues with that.
Mhm.
And like bodybuilding has fucking fixed it, man.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
no.
like and like just like, you know, if you're like a jack dude and you can like lift some weight and you feel good about yourself physically, you know how much easier it is to like go approach women?
Oh, it's dude, it's so much easier, and I don't think people understand the power. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, dude, like, for 30 bucks or $20 a month or just buy your own gym equipment and
Mhm.
change your life, and they don't see the power in that. They're just I'm big on on, like, aesthetics, but some people think, like, you can just put on a Halloween costume and that will get you. I'm like, it's so much more than that, man, like,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
confidence and, like, women can tell, like, you have, like, bigger shoulders and you're not 150 pounds anymore.
Yeah. And the
You gotta
bar
grab your arm and they're like, "Oh my gosh."
yeah, and like I know like we probably, you know, you probably follow like all the guys, like all the bodybuilders, you know, like Paul Carter,
Oh, yeah, Paul Carter for sure.
Lane Norton or whatever, like all those dudes, and you're like, wow, those guys look amazing. But you have to realize, like the people that we're comparing ourselves to are like the top 1% of the top 1% when it comes to physiques. But
Right.
just if you're a dude who lifts and you have like somewhat of a good physique, you're in the top. Like if you look around, like if you just go out, like you just like if, yeah, you just look around and you're
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm a fucking god, you know. And
Yeah.
I'll be obviously like be humble, of course.
Yeah, of course, always be humble.
But
Dude, it's so
like
funny, it's like, you just go out and it's like, I don't know, I'm like, how I don't know how, like, some guys are just like, "Oh, man, I can't see my dick," or, like, you can't look in the mirror, you're like, "I look like, a trash bag, like, filled with mayonnaise," like,
yeah, how are you okay with that shit?
I don't understand that, I'll never get that, can't relate to that.
What's that fucking word that everyone's using? It's like it's like, oh fuck, I can't remember it. It's like if someone looks a certain way, it's like who they are on the inside. What's that word you always?
Physiognomy?
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
do like you do like the check, and it's like I had this one friend of mine from way back, and he was like shitting on my my views, whatever, some shit I'm posting, you know, you're an idiot. Like what rights have been taken? I was talking about like the coup and like we're being like our personal freedoms are being taken away. And then I go like I haven't talked to this guy in a long time, so I just go on his profile and I see him, and he's literally doing this, dude. Like he takes a selfie, and he literally does this face. He literally does the fucking
sorry, face.
soy face, and he's like fucking packing like 60 pounds of extra weight, dude. He's just like a fucking circle. And like I'm not trying to say this to, like shame people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to shame anyone. But it's like it's pretty fucking it's like, dude, if you can't even get your fucking physicality in order, if you can't control and be disciplined about what you fucking put in your body and like how you exercise, I don't fucking take you seriously. Like
100%.
fuck your political opinions, fuck your cultural opinions. I don't care. Period. If you look like shit and you don't have like, yeah, obviously there's going to be the one exception to some dude who has like a physical disability and some other shit. But even then, man, even then, you can still do something, right? You can control your fucking body. And if you can't do that, there's a fucking problem with you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't take your shit serious.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And like, I want to highlight on the last, or like one of the last points you made about like, if you have a physical disability, I feel like our culture always points to that. They're like the marginalized, this and that. I'm like, they're 0.0001% of the population, and they always do that for like whatever, like racial or fat phobic or whatever. I'm like, they're the extreme case, and you can have sympathy for those people and understand there's a difference. And I think we could all be
Yeah.
like, okay, well, sure, we can make an exception for there, but then they apply it to like the
General
general.
population.
it's like, that's not true. Like, to your point, I'm like, if you put a fat person in a room for like 2 weeks, they're going to lose weight. They don't just get bigger. They don't acquire more molecules like or atoms onto their body, like out of thin air. Like, you know, it's like it's like Lane Norton, calories in, calories out. Right. But yeah, I don't trust you. Like, it's like, you have no discipline. Like, if you can't take care of your body, which is like the only vessel you have in this world, like the only thing you can really count on, you have no discipline in there, or you don't have like it, you know, the discipline of the body and like what you put in, what you put out, the exercise, the regimen, how you approach your aesthetics, like even the facial demeanor of like not making a soy face, like being observant to that. It's like, why should I take you seriously about like anything? Because you clearly haven't even mastered the basics. So what makes me think that you've done the same about like your political opinions, cultural beliefs? You know what I mean? And they think of us as like meatheads, or like we're just some one-dimensional cartoon character. I'm like,
no. I've read more books than you, motherfucker. I guarantee it.
Every time.
I don't give a fuck. Come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro. I often find that we read their books. We know their stuff more than they actually know what they're talking about, which is the irony. You know, it's like,
yeah,
they can't even tell you what they believe.
Because in some cases, I was once like you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But then we became evil
before I transcended to the apparent dark side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's funny, man. Yeah, like who do you follow when it comes to like physical fitness and nutrition?
I follow. You listed Paul Carter. I think like there was a different paradigm for me when I thought about like hypertrophy training. And to your point about like using that, like you had mentioned you had back problems, but like when you focus on like the way Paul Carter does, and like not necessarily using the barbell because it's like a compound movement, that was a different paradigm of thinking for me. Because you know, when you're really bodybuilding, you're like really focusing on the mechanical tension of like how you're actually training those individual muscles and having the concentration there. That was like Paul Carter, I guess, is a big one, because I was like, oh, that's how you can, you know, zero in on that muscle group. That's how you can really get that tension. That's how you can build up your body. And as you were talking about the back, like even, oh, okay, like I have back problems in my lower back because like my spinal erectors are weak, or, you know, my hamstrings or my glutes are like weak. And so therefore it's like pulling on my body, and like I need to strengthen those individual muscles. So Paul Carter is like always my go-to. That's who my trainer follows. He's the one who got me into him. Lane Norton. I used to for a second, I was like following like guys like, you know, Paul Saladino or Carnivore Aurelius and like the keto.
I think we all go through that a little bit. We all fall for like, we find out that the keto is actually the dietary blue pill.
yeah, right. You're like, oh, I'll just
calories in, calories out, motherfucker.
Yeah,
so basic yet so fucking like it's hard. I don't know, man. There's a lot of fucking weird psyops in nutrition.
It's true. And then you think Lane Norton's a bull. You're like, oh, he's a bully. He's like calling people out. But then you're like, it's like you can't dispute Lane, right? And like the calories in, calories out. Even like when you introduce carbs, whether it's muscle protein synthesis or like, you know, you utilizing carbs, so you utilize more protein, right? And so you're able to train harder rather than restricting yourself. That's why I'm, you know, we're in this space where you see a lot of like the trad guys who are like eat like Soul Bra or whatever, but even more like restricted, where
I mean Soul Bra like eats carbs and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, he eats like you spend like $1,000 a month on fucking groceries.
Yeah, exactly. But to your point, it's like Soul Bra, it's like really expensive to eat that way. And a lot of the guys that like, I like Soul Bra stuff, but like a lot of guys that follow him, or they're like, oh, you train this way, and like, oh, you eat Whole Foods. I'm not opposed to that, but if you have the money for it, go for it. But if you follow like Lane Norton, you see that you can make more like anabolic kind of stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be Whole Foods, but it also helps your training. That's why a lot of these guys don't have like superior physiques. They're not Soul Bra, because they're not able to like utilize different different foods or like different recipes, because they're trying so hard to be all natural, or like in terms of like whole foods. So Lane Norton and Paul Carter are probably the biggest ones. I used to do a lot of follow a lot of the, like the hit train stuff, but not anymore. You can't train like Liver King. You can't do that. And I'm a pretty good athlete, and it's like you can't do that. It's your body will break down too fast.
Like one thing I do is like I train a lot of the Paul Carter is someone that I've followed for quite a while now. I actually had him on the podcast last
Oh,
year.
no way. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that was like one of the first podcasts I did. I was like, oh wow, I'm surprised he said yes. Cool. I need to get him back on though, because I've upped my audio and video game, and my overall interviewing is a lot better than it was. But his style of training definitely helped me, like when it came to, like you said, like back problems. Oh, my erector muscles are weak, so I would train those. And then I moved, instead of doing like conventional deads, I'll do like the stiff-legged dead, so I get a better stimulus in the hamstrings, and like learning all that. I still do a lot of compound movements, and but I think about that, how to target specific tissues and stuff like that. Yeah, man. As far as like the HIIT training goes, I don't really do I do a little bit of that, like maybe at the end of a workout because I'm cutting. But right now I'm doing just running. I run like 3 to 4 times a week. Nothing too extreme, but
how far do you go?
I don't actually track.
Oh, you just run?
I just fucking run,
like
man.
Yeah. Right on. I feel that.
Yeah, I try to like I always do it outside, and I don't that's the one part where it's like if I'm running, I don't like to track anything. I'll just listen to music, run outside, get some sun.
I think there's something nice about
that. Yeah, the whole thing about like cardio, like making you lose muscle and shit, like if you do it to an extreme degree, yeah, for sure, but a little bit of cardio is good for sure.
Yeah, it feels good. I used to be a runner, so I know a lot of people hate on running, but I love the runner's high. It's so it's almost without being too hippie-ish, it's like a spiritual experience sometimes. It's nice to be out in nature, and when you get in a good flow of running, it feels good.
And I think just like the mental benefits of cardio are great too. Do you mostly, when it comes to the bodybuilding stuff, do you train like 4 times a week or more than that?
I train 5 times a week.
5 times.
Sometimes I'll push it to 6, but I usually find like my body starts to fall apart. And then I have a big head, so I'm like, oh, I'm going to train. And to your point about barbells, I'll throw on the barbell because I'm like, I do love compound lifts too. So I'm like, well, I want to test my squat, like, So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious because you're kind of talking about like the blue pill of fitness and nutrition and all that. What were some of the things in the beginning that you fell for that were kind of holding you back? Like even when it comes to training, because you kind of brought up the fact that you were like following a lot of the keto guys, but like what about like what are the equivalent of that, but to fitness specifically, like lifting specifically?
Okay, so I think for lifting, I had started off with bodybuilding training, like hypertrophy training, like when I was very young, like when I was like 13. And then I found
just 13-year-old is, I'm gonna get so many chicks, dude.
Oh yeah, dude. Like I was insane. I started going to 24-hour fitness, and randomly here's how I solved racism. I had this big black dude. He looked like Ronnie Coleman. He like just got out of jail, and he was like, I think he just needed a friend. And this is me like at 18 years old. He was like started talking to me because I would go to the gym like at like strange hours at like late at night. And me and my buddy would go, and then he just started talking to me all the time. But this guy started training me, and his name was Burnett, and he taught me everything from like man makers or like doing landmines, like literally every kind of like lift. Like he got me on the bench press. And that was probably the strongest I ever got in my life because this guy was training me. But this guy was nuts. He was funny because he was like the Alex Jones before Alex Jones. He would talk about how like bees are spying on us and like aliens and all this other
shit.
Yeah, but that's the guy who like really I learned like most of like my hypertrophy work from. And then I would do that, but then I didn't know it to the degree like Paul Carter would explain it. I just knew how to train. So he just taught me all the movements, but I didn't know exactly like, well, what does this do for your muscles? And then I got into CrossFit. and I'd done that for a long time, for like 10 years. And
Fuck,
so
fucking CrossFit, man.
yeah.
I did that shit at the start for quite a few
Oh yeah.
years. Yeah.
So I think I think the red pill is coming back to like hypertrophy and being like, because I'd get injured in CrossFit, or I would be like my physique wasn't improving. Like I just would end
Yeah.
up skinny fat.
No.
And you see a
Yeah.
lot of CrossFitters who are skinny fat, and I'm like, oh, like I guess it's like you come back full circle and you're like, oh, it's because you're breaking down your body. It's like in a catabolic state all the time. You can't like retain muscle. So I guess that's like, and then also to your point about like all the different kind of diets and stuff, like I tried everything and then I was like, oh, here's where I'm doing it all wrong. I'm not resting, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating my protein, I'm training way too hard. I'm trying to run also, like not to your point, like where it's like a generic run. And
Like
I'd be like, oh,
running too much. Yeah.
I'd be like, I got to run 9 miles so I could lose weight and like look shredded, but I would end up being skinny fat, and all my numbers would plummet on the barbell. So it really is as simple as just doing the basics,
It was kind of funny you brought up Lane Norton and you thought he was kind of a bully. I actually felt the same way, but it's kind of funny though because it's like, oh, he's like the fucking nutritional, like the nutrition Chad that we're like, oh, he's a bully.
Yeah.
He's like, here's
yeah.
the truth, motherfucker.
And you find out you're the libtard.
It's like, fuck, it applies to everything, man.
Everything, man. If it's painful, it's probably true.
Yeah. If it pisses you off, you're like, fuck.
Yeah. A year from now, I'm like, Black Lives Matter was right.
Full circle on everything.
Yeah.
It is right, but this is why.
Right,
like some new understanding.
Yeah. We're wearing masks all the time.
Yeah.
And Ukraine shirts.
Dude, do you still need to wear masks in California, like at the gym and shit?
Oh no, they finally lifted it like a month ago.
Holy
I'm
shit.
so happy. It's like, yeah, I'm so happy that it's over. So stupid.
Yeah, pretty much the same here now. Everything's
that's good.
Back to normal for now, so we'll see.
Yeah. It's funny how it just magically disappeared.
Yeah, it's pretty. The science changed.
Yeah.
Do you think one other thing I wanted to get into too is like the whole like do you see some of like the woke ideas kind of like coming into the like scientific community when it comes to nutrition and training and stuff like that? There's a lot of like galaxy brain dudes that like just overcomplicate training and make it kind of boring, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I felt like I always tag Jeff Nipples. Jeff Nipples.
I actually saw that post.
Jeff, if you're seeing this, I challenge you. I feel like, yeah, because indirectly, he did like a dissertation on George Floyd. And I was like, oh gosh. And like,
I actually saw that. I was a little bit surprised. And even like the way he handled some of the, like, I'm not going to shit talk Jeff Nippard, but like some of the things he says, I'm like, bro, why?
I'm like, and I'm not disputing, like, I know a lot of people like Jeff, but like the RPE, like, and I know it's a useful tool and all that stuff, but I don't know if that's woke per se, but I'm more in the camp of like, my personal philosophy.
Just fucking train hard, brother.
I'm Hulk Hogan.
You got to eat big to get big.
Yeah, I'm not denying science and all that other stuff, but I feel like part of it is like they've made it too more mechanical to me, where it's like it's not as fun. It's like I feel like a robot. Like, yeah, you have to have some energy, and it's not to say that you can't do it with the scientific approach, but sometimes I feel like it's just overcomplicated. But as far as like the woke stuff, like, a guy I really like is Greg Doucette, and sometimes he's like right on the. He has like his phrase like everybody's a circle, we're all different, blah blah blah. And sometimes he's like right there on the red pill line where he's like, train hard, like, he has that mentality, but then he's also like, it's okay if you're fat and blah blah blah. Like, not really, because he'll call out fat people and stuff, but I'm not really in the mindset of like inclusivity. I hate that term, like Jordan Peterson. Like, I don't. It's like, no, like, strive to be better. Like, like, yeah, obviously just doing something is better than nothing, but like I think we've lost that ethos of just not just being okay, but like try harder, like, you know, rise above it. It's like, I don't like the family friendly, you know, like I'm just gonna just jog lightly. It's like you only have your youth for so long. So okay, maybe I'm an extremist in that sense, but I feel like you should make the most of training and be a little bit extreme. You know, it's such a great gift to be able to train hard or
Mhm.
you know, try to be like the best version of yourself. And people make fun of it, but it's like,
They make fun of it because you're just exposing their insecurities.
yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel sad when people like realize too late. They're like, oh, I had so much more potential, you know? And to
Mhm.
me, it's like, it's almost like kind of like letting part of yourself die when you don't try hard, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And it's like if you could literally have the world falling apart around you, but you can still go to the gym. And that I think that's why it's really important to, like there have been times in my life where the gym was the only thing fucking keeping me going.
Yeah.
When you're fucking going through the breakup or the divorce or like you feel like you're alone in the world, you can keep going to the gym and keep making progress. Like you can still have some sort of meaning in your life. Not
Right.
to
And
get too fucking like, man, like the gym fucking is the reason I haven't shot myself. It's not that. It's not that, but it's like to a certain degree, maybe, like it's so basic. You just go to the fucking gym. It's not like starting a business. Like starting a business is fucking complicated. Like there's so many other like you
Mhm.
just you just fucking put some workout clothes on, you get in your fucking car, you go to the gym, you train, and every time you write down what you did, and then you come back and you try to do one more than what you did, or a little bit heavier than what you did, train harder than last time. That's all
right.
you got to fucking do. And you just
Oh, yeah.
keep
Yeah.
on fucking doing that. And it's so basic.
Yeah. It's so basic. And and that's what I mean. It's like, even if you're training, like just do a little bit more. It doesn't, you'll be surprised, you know,
Mm.
don't steal that from yourself.
You actually brought up something on your story too, how you were saying like, and then there's the people that go to the gym and it's like, fuck yeah, you're in the gym, man. It's like you've made the first step. But then there's the people who go to the gym and like the percentage of people that are in the gym actually training properly is pretty low.
Yeah. It's like,
It's like, fuck, man, you already showed up. At least like look at a YouTube video or something.
yeah, no, it's true. And then I feel like I was trying to tie that to like why people are like, well, not to black pill, but I'm like, that's why so many people are, maybe few people I feel like are in our camp, because you know, not a lot of people ask questions about like why or like how or this and that. They don't.
Mm.
They'll go into deep. It's funny because people will drill really hard on like what restaurants they want to go out to eat, what cool places to go,
Yeah.
what's the next Netflix. They'll get really into that or some celebrity stuff. But like when it's like the basics of their life or like how the financial economy works and how it relates to
Yeah.
your own savings so you could buy a house, especially here in California. And they don't even ask those questions. But like when I was relating it to the gym, it's like you've made this whole effort. Good for you. I'm glad. But like you're in here, just learn some basic stuff. Because I'd see too many people. They'll take up a bench and they're doing like these weird punches, and then they'll do Bulgarian split squats, and they'll like run across the gym to do like tricep pull downs, and then they'll back and do jumping jacks. I'm like, what are you training for? What are you doing?
Yeah. No, and like for me personally, like I always tell people, like it took me a long time to figure shit out. And I do ask questions. So I get it. It's like you come into the gym and also there is a a ton of bad information out there, Like
That's
I wish I found people like Paul Carter or Lane Norton when I first started, but
right.
I found some fucking dude telling me to like remove carbs out of my diet, so I felt like shit. You know,
Yeah, right.
it's like, dude, like I remember like trying the keto thing and being like, okay, like this is the diet. This is the diet that's gonna turn me into a fucking Greek god. And then you actually start eating that way, and you're like, I feel like fuck. I feel like a bag of shit.
My dick isn't working.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah,
This is not the way. Then you start eating some carbs, and you're like, wow, I can train.
oh, I know, right? The difference how hard you can train is like insane. And then somebody's like, you know, some hip like Saladino is like, you know, it's like crazy eyes. It's like, yeah, just eat meat and like bull testicles. And I'm like, I don't want to look like you.
Cool, man. Well, we're over an hour and a half. I try to keep these things kind of like around the hour mark to an hour and a half. We were on quite a fucking we were riffing pretty good there for a while, but let's wrap it up, man. If you want to just let people know where they can find you, that'd be great.
Yeah, you can find me on my Instagram is the Fizeek Father. And then Fizeek is spelled Fizeek and then Father. And then
Edgy, bro.
hopefully I'm gonna get more social channels. But I have my Telegram on there too in case I get banned. But if I get banned, you haven't seen the last of me.
We'll see you again.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised. I was surprised when I found your page. I'm like, how the fuck is this guy still have an Instagram account?
I don't know either.
Because they wipe people out, man. Like, I don't know if you know who War Boss is.
No, I don't.
I can yeah, he's like a strength and conditioning coach, and he doesn't even say anything that crazy, but he got fucking wiped.
Well, I know they've wiped Paul Carter a few times. I'm like, what does he say? Like he'll say some stories, but nothing.
He shares like some like anti like he like talks shit about the vaccine or
Oh,
anything kind of right wing. You get fucking wiped, man.
yeah.
So that's always sketchy. Do you ever think about like starting a YouTube channel or anything like that?
Yeah, man. Like I've even got I think about it all the time. I'm planning to do it probably like in the next couple months, honestly. So look out for a YouTube channel. We'll see how long I last there too. But
Sweet, man.
yeah, look out for that.
Cool, man. We'll definitely do this again.
Hey, I thank you, man.